Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Explore and Engage with Anam. We watched the Republican presidential candidates on stage sharing their views and trying to gain support of the voters. I am talking about the Republican presidential debate that took place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a battleground state, and therefore it is extremely important. And the fact that the first presidential debate of the 2024 election cycle was held in Wisconsin, that tells people that the path to the White House starts here in Wisconsin. Another name for Wisconsin is America's Dairyland. There are some big cities in the state, such as Milwaukee, but many Wisconsinites live in rural communities. And some of those communities are very small when you look at the population of a town. As I watched the debate, I was not trying to determine who won and who did not win. I'm proud of the fact that Republicans have some great candidates running for the White House, and we saw 8 of them on stage yesterday. Obviously, President Trump was not there, but he still is the front runner, and we must recognize that. Of the candidates on stage last night, one candidate said something that really had an impact, especially in a state like Wisconsin, where there are many small rural communities. Governor Doug Burgum of North Dakota introduced himself by saying that he is from a town of 300 people and that it's a big deal to make it onto the debate stage with all the other candidates. There's no doubt that Governor Doug Burgum, he's a successful businessman. He's the governor of a great, beautiful state. But he emphasized on his small town values and how neighbors help neighbors in small communities. And that will help him connect with rural voters and rural voters here in Wisconsin. And I think that is very admirable, what he said. Obviously, a lot of focus is usually on big cities and candidates from major cities, but to try to win the hearts and minds of the people, a presidential candidate, has to connect with voters from small towns. And there are many small towns across America, many. So I liked the fact that Governor Doug Burgum was, the way he introduced himself as he participated in the debate in Milwaukee. I can tell you that many people who attended the debate in a very big city of Milwaukee, many of the people in the audience actually traveled from small towns to get there. There were many people in audience yesterday who understand life in small communities. The other things I personally liked about Mr. Doug Burgum was his emphasis on energy policy. Energy is the lifeblood of our economy. And when energy prices rise, it disrupts the entire economy. And that's something we are experiencing right now. Americans depend on affordable energy for personal transportation, to power their homes, to commute to work, to run their places of business, and so much more. Governor Burgum said that energy, economy, and national security are all tied together. That is absolutely correct. If we are energy independent, then it will help our economy thrive, and it can help ensure strong national security. Governor Burgum also mentioned Inflation Creation Act, which was a reference to the Inflation Reduction Act. And we all know that that President Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act did not reduce inflation. Actually, it made inflation worse. And so when Governor Burgum said Inflation Creation Act, that is, I think, a more appropriate name for what's known as Inflation Reduction Act. No, it does not reduce inflation. It creates more inflation, and so it actually should be called Inflation Creation Act. And another thing that's quite important to win the hearts and minds of the voters is to be humorous, to have some humor as you are on debate stage addressing the audience and expressing your viewpoints. Not too much of humor, but just the right amount of humor. And when Governor Burgum said that people told him to go to Milwaukee and break a leg, he took it literally. And he was referring to the incident that happened right before the debate, in which Governor Burgum unfortunately suffered an injury and ended up in the emergency room. So there were questions about whether he will be able to participate in the debate, and obviously we are happy to see that he was on stage participating in the debate. And when Governor Burgum said that, when he talked about breaking a leg, the audience laughed, and you could hear that. And then he moved on to talking about important things about the economy. So Governor Burgum used humor, but he did not make fun of anyone. He was not making fun of the other candidates. He was not trying to be humorous by making fun of another candidate on stage. He was just trying to be humorous in a very nice way. And so that's very, very admirable, I think. And of course, throughout the rest of the debate, he talked about important issues, and most noticeably, the governor mentioned the 10th Amendment when talking about abortion. The point was to say that abortion is an issue that should be left up to the states rather than the federal government. And that is pretty interesting, because what it means is that we have to reduce the size of federal government. We have to limit the federal government's power and give more freedom to the states, and each state will likely come up with a different conclusion, because the voters in New York may have different thoughts and priorities than the voters in Wisconsin. So an issue like abortion should be left up to the states to decide which, and as he was discussing that, he mentioned the 10th Amendment. So that was I think pretty amazing. That was a good answer. Now overall, I think Governor Burgum did a good job. Now it's up to the voters to decide who they wish to see. And as I am discussing the debate that took place in Milwaukee, I am not trying to determine, as I said, I am not trying to determine who won, who did not. As a podcaster who focuses on social and political issues, both domestic and international, I just want to share my thoughts about the debate. And my previous podcast episode, I discussed a few more things about the debate. I talked about some of the other candidates and what they mentioned during the debate. And so as a podcaster and also as a trained policy analyst, I'm a policy analyst by training. And so I like researching different issues and discussing different issues, and especially when something like a presidential debate is taking place, I like to watch it very closely to try to analyze the different viewpoints that the different candidates are expressing. And then in response, I share my thoughts and comments through my podcast and through the things that I write. So you can go to tasifanam.net and check out my blog posts also, in addition to my published opinions, and you'll find all that information on my website. So anyway, I'm sure that there will be new polls following the debate to try to understand what impact this debate will have on Republican voters. And this is the beauty of a free country. People can disagree and still have a great conversation. They can debate and discuss different ideas, and then the voters get to choose their preferred candidate. So with that, my friends, thank you for continuing to listen to my podcast. Please go to tasifanam.net. Send me a message. You can also find me on social media. Stay connected with me. Share with me your thoughts. And I hope to be back again soon with a new episode of Explore and Engage with Anam.